Hi everyone, welcome back to the Pro MMA Betting podcast. So we're going to break down the Marvin Vettori Kevin Holland card coming up this Saturday. 15 fights on the card, I believe, so quite a few to get through. So as always, we'll start from the bottom, work our way through to the main event, have a look at if there's any value on each individual fight. Remember, this is a betting podcast. I'm not just going to pick who I feel wins necessarily. We're going to look at the betting odds, see where we feel there's value, etc. It's different to most pods out there. It is more betting orientated. So if you like having a gamble on the fights, this is definitely a podcast that will be suited to you. If you just like to see who people think is going to win, it's not really going to be suited for you. We are looking at percentages, we're looking at value, trying to deem if there is any value on current lines. So it is a betting podcast, hence the name Pro MMA Betting Podcast. As always, we'll do a quick recap on how we got on last time out. There hasn't been a UFC for a couple of weeks. Didn't actually have a pre-bet on the last UFC. We just live betted that card. The only pre-bets we've had since the last card were we had some action on the Bellator 255 card. We had 2.5 units on Khalid Murtazaliev, which came in. And we also had half a unit on Emmanuel Sanchez. I thought there was some value there, evidently not. But judging by the first fight, I was expecting... Obviously, there was always a potential that Pitbull could finish. But I thought if Sanchez could survive, I thought it would be a very close fight. But ultimately, got stopped in the first round. So we took home just under a unit's profit from the Bellator 255 card. And if we just have a quick look at how we've got on with live betting, because we concentrated on live betting for the last UFC card, and there's also been some boxing since I last on the podcast as well, where we concentrated on the live betting. So quick recap on how we got on there. So we had a boxing card on the 26th of March, where we took Brad Foster by decision, won us just over a unit. Then on the 27th of March, we had 3 bets. So this was the same day, I think, as the last UFC. So we had 3 live bets on the boxing on the Saturday. We took Michael McKinson for about -120 for a unit, which came in. Campbell Hatton decision, we took at about +175 for half a unit that came in. And for those that could get on, I know not everyone can get on these, but I did tip the Wardley Molina fight to go over 3.5 rounds. I think I tipped that after round 1. We took that at about -120 for a unit, and that came in as well. Only live bets we had on the last UFC show were I had a crack at Julian Robertson after round 2, +175 for a unit, which didn't come in. And then we did have boxing last weekend as well. Just the one fight. It was Jamel Herrig taking on Carl Frampton. Jumped in on Herrig early. I think after round 1 or 2 we took him for a unit at -200, which came in for us. So we've done well on live betting since the last UFC, mainly on the boxing. Number of units profit there. All the bets are tracked, guys. I've had to take links off below the video for this because YouTube were giving me violation warnings, so I've had to take them off. But they're all viewable at ProMMABetting.com. All the trackers are on there. I track all of my pre-bets. Most of the pre-bets are tracked at Bet MMA. I can't track everything at Bet MMA because sometimes there's pre-bets for boxing. I can't track them on there. And they're getting better at throwing up odds for other shows. But sometimes if you do a parlay between UFC and boxing, you can't track that on there either. So I do have another spreadsheet that's visible on my website as well for bets that I occasionally forget to put on Bet MMA or ones that I just physically can't put on there. And there's also a live betting tracker, so you can see our full results. I need to update the results for 2020. I'm going to do that before I do next week's podcast. So we'll have a clean look at results for 2019 and 2020. And obviously we're in 2021 now. If you want to sign up for a membership, ProMMABetting.com. Memberships are available. We offer a pre-betting and live betting service. The live bets are provided on a private Discord channel. The channel is suspended between fights, so no one else can contribute to the chat while a fight's going on. You can only see my tips. There's a community in there, a lot of like-minded people, very knowledgeable people, like discussing the fights during the week, and good camaraderie on fight night as well. So we've got the UFC this weekend. We'll have live betting for the whole card. and there's also a pre-bet with members as well. There is boxing, but unfortunately it clashes with the UFC this week because the UFC's on early. I think they done this card at an early time for the European viewer for the original main event, which was meant to be Teal versus Vettori, but unfortunately that's fallen through now. So because of the early start, we won't be able to live bet the boxing. What we normally do is live bet the boxing, which is on before the UFC when it's on in the UK, and then we'd follow that straight after with UFC live betting. But UFC always gets priority, so it will be UFC live betting only this weekend. So the packages are all on there. Please give us a follow at Twitter at Pro MMA Betting. I often throw out during the week tips on certain fights, how I feel fights are going to play. Obviously, I do this podcast as well, which breaks down the fights, and I often throw out a discount on a yearly membership as well. Normally do it like once a week. I throw it out, or offer a couple at maybe half price. So keep an eye on that. If you can like this video, really appreciate it as well. Trying to grow the viewers as much as possible. So we're going to jump into the card now, guys. As I say, we'll start from bottom to top. We'll look at it from a betting perspective. So let me just bring up the fight order. Going to run through the fights fairly quickly because there's 15 guys, so I'm not going to spend ages on every fight. First fight, we've got Per Unit taking on Sasha Palatnikov. Imper's moving down to 170 here. This is his first fight since the viral KO loss that he suffered. Sasha is coming off a win over one of the Kosi brothers. He was a big underdog in that fight. Survived a torrid round one. Kosi gassed and Sasha came on strong and got the stoppage in round 3. Imper's unplayable. He's minus 280. You can't, in my opinion, be laying that on him. I mean, you do have to favour him. He's going to look very big at the weight here. I mean, Sasha has fought at 185 in the past as well, but when I saw him fight Kosi, he didn't look like a particularly big welterweight to me. So I imagine Imper's definitely going to be the bigger guy in here. His last fight, Imper, I mean, it was nip and tuck until he got knocked out. There wasn't, much in it. And, he's young, he's raw. But he's definitely improved. If you look at his earlier fights on the Contender Series, very wrestling heavy approach, you can see he's been working on his stand-up. It's definitely coming along. Sasha, still don't have a full read on him. I remember when he made his UFC debut, I did have a look at him and he didn't look great on tape. And then against Kosi, and he looked definitely a lot better than he did on the regional tape. Done well to survive. I mean, if Sasha got knocked out in the first round, which he nearly did, and they still made this fight with Imper would be a huge favourite here. But ultimately, he survived and came back and won. But it's just a no play for me. I mean, I'm going to pick Imper. I think he's a decently trained fighter. I don't think Sasha's UFC caliber, but minus 280, there's just no interest. To lay the juice in MMA, guys, you've got to be really confident. And, I don't have that. Like I said, I don't have a full read on Sasha yet either. And Imper's coming off a bad knockout loss. You have to wonder if that will affect him mentally. Some fighters can come back and be a bit gun shy, a bit cautious. You just don't know how it's going to affect him. So at like minus 280, it's just a pass fight for me. I mean, I'm going to pick Imper. I'm not going to, the line is too wide in my opinion. So in theory, there's probably maybe some value on Sasha perhaps, but Imper's not really known for being a finisher either. So when his most realistic path to victory might be decision, minus 280 is a lot of juice to lay if you think a fight is going to be won by decision, especially when someone isn't a massively over-dominating fighter. But, Imper can mix in the wrestling when he needs to, and I just think he's going to be too well-rounded for Sasha. So I'll go Imper, but it's just a no play from a betting perspective. The Jung taking on William Knight. Jung's a slight favourite. He's about minus 140 now. This is a tricky one in my opinion. I think Knight is the kind of guy that guys will love to fade, but he just gives me vibes as one of those guys that you watch tape and you want to fade him, but you keep trying to fade him and he keeps winning. He's just one of them guys, in my opinion, very, very muscular for 205, but he actually oddly has pretty solid cardio for a guy so muscular. It's not often you see a guy this muscular with really solid cardio. He's a floor fighter. He's not got good striking. Obviously, he's got power, but he's very basic on the feet. His strength is really trying to grind you on the fence and get you to the mat and get on top. That's where his strength lies. Jung is a striker. He'll want to keep his fight standing. Disappointing performance from him last time against Sam Alvey. He was probably a little bit lucky perhaps to come away with a draw there. Does have power on the feet. I think this is going to come down to whether he can keep the fight vertical or not. You have to go back to the Cadiz fight to see his takedown defence, and I think technically Cadiz is a better takedown artist. A lot of William Knight's takedowns are like judo trips, things like that. It's hard as you move up the levels. They're really hard to land those kind of takedowns. Can he land them on Jung? I'm not sure. It wouldn't shock me. I don't think Jung's ceiling is particularly high. Cadiz did keep taking him down, but Jung is good at getting back to his feet. I went and watched one of his regional fights as well, and it was very similar in the terms he was getting taken down, like he'd get put on his knees or on his arse, but he'd get back up. So he can be taken down, but he is good at getting up. Don't really need to worry about giving you back up against someone like Knight. He's not really going to jump on your back. He's more about trying to pound you out. So the likelihood is Knight takes him down and Jung probably keeps popping back up, and at range he's definitely got the advantage. So I did look at Jung hoping that I'd like him for a bet, but I'm just unsure. I'm just unsure about him. I didn't like that Alvey performance, and I just don't have a great read on his takedown defence. But Knight's takedowns aren't great. Like I said, a lot of them are judo throws. Stuff isn't going to work as you move up the levels, but is Jung that level of competition? So it's a tough one. I know a lot of people on Jung here, and I can understand why, but like I said, Knight's just one of these guys that he keeps pulling out the wins. You look on Contender Series, losing that fight, pulled it out of the bag, lost the first round in his UFC debut, turned it around. I think the smaller cage favours him as well with his style. I'm going to go with the upset here. I'm not confident because Knight, like I said, he's one of those fighters you look at and you want to fade him, but he just gives me vibes of one of those that keeps pulling off the upset when you fade him. So I'm going to actually pick Knight here to somehow get enough top control, maybe start doing some damage as the fight goes on, and come away with another scrappy, awkward-looking victory. But it's a fight I've passed on from a betting perspective. I don't feel there's enough value for me to risk betting Knight, but I'm going to pick him here as the underdog. Louis Saldana, Jordan Griffin next. So Louis Saldana is one of these fighters coming off the Contender Series. You need to be really careful betting the Contender Series guys because they get a lot of hype and they get normally an unjustified betting line, and that is because what happens on Contender Series is there's a lot of mismatches, and the fighters that come off Contender Series with the victories, they often look better on the Contender Series than they actually are because they're being fed just overmatched opponents. Like Saldana had Vince Murdoch. Vince isn't great. I mean, I remember taping him and watching him struggle on fights on the Indian MMA scene. He's not a great fighter. Saldana definitely looks like a fighter that's improved. It's difficult to find some tape on some of his losses, but you're going back a few years. But his more recent victories, it looks like he's kind of found his style. He fights out of the MMA lab. He'll fight long. He is a long fighter, and he'll use it well. Jordan Griffin, he's been in UFC a while now. Now Griffin's a dog. He'll come out and he's a wild man. He's going to go in there. He's going to throw down. He will crash the distance. He's going to try and get in Saldana's face, and he's probably going to look for takedowns. That seems to be something that he does in his fights, but he's hard to trust. Like, his fight IQ is questionable. I remember he dropped for a guillotine in round 3 against Chas Skelly, and it cost him the fight. But he's a game fighter, and he's got losses to Dan Ige, Chas Skelly, and Zalal, but he took a round off each of them. He got a win over TJ Brown in a fight where he was getting pretty swept, getting absolutely grappled by TJ Brown, and he pulled out a real low percentage. I think he got the guillotine from like half guard, which is very unusual. But he's not the easiest person to deal with, and like I said, he did take a round off each fighter in those 3 losses. The line's been coming down. Saldana's about minus 140 now. There's definitely more questions on Saldana. I don't know. This is a step up for him. Jordan Griffin is the best fighter he's faced for a while. Well, just look at his record. I mean, he's probably the best opponent he's had ever. I mean, he's got a loss to Mike Santiago, who some of you may remember. He lost in the 3rd round, but that was, we're getting on for 5 years ago. It's just hard to get a proper read on Saldana because of the level of competition. I mean, he lost to Alex Wicks back in, we're talking 4 years ago. And since then, he's got 4 wins in a row, but, not against great competition. This is definitely a step up for him. I've got to go with Griffin here. I can't bet Griffin because he's a bit of a wild man. Fight IQ. He does slow down as well, which is a bit of a concern. But he's the more proven fighter. I've seen him in there against good competition, and he has held his own. It's just fight IQ, things like that have let him down. So I'm going to go with Griffin here. I'm going to fade the Contender Series hype here, and I'm going to pick the underdog Jordan Griffin. But you could be pulling your hair out if you bet Griffin. Like I said, fight IQ is something that's a bit questionable from him, and he can slow down in fights as well. So if it's high paced, you could see a drop off in pace. I mean, he did lose round 3 against Ige. He lost round 3 against Skelly. He lost round 3 against Salau, I believe. I'm trying to go off memory there. So tends to drop round 3s. But Saldana, it's a step up. So I'm going to go with the dog here. Like I said, you have to be careful with the Contender Series guys because they can get overhyped from coming off looking very impressive against guys that are overmatched. So I'm going to go with the UFC vet in Jordan Griffin here as a slight underdog. Next, we've got Hunter Azar taking on Jack Shaw. Jack Shaw I followed a long time. I was betting him on Cage Warriors. Used to get him at like minus 300 against absolute no-hopers in terms of having a chance against Jack Shaw. So he's made me some decent money. He's unbeaten. The thing with Jack Shaw is you can say, he's not really had to step up in competition, but he's done exactly what you'd want from a prospect. I don't recall a fight where he's had any issues, really. He's kind of dealt with everyone pretty easily. Came into the UFC. I remember he wasn't a big favourite in his debut. I think he was about minus 160 and comfortable victory. And then he was a massive favourite last time out. But this is definitely a big step up for him. Hunter is going to be very aggressive on the feet. His striking's not the best technically, but he's wild. He's got like a weird extension to his punches that I think catches people unawares as well. So he's going to be coming forward in his face. He's got a decent calf kick as well. He's got a decent wrestling background. Whether that's going to be enough to stop Jack Shaw get his grappling going, I don't know. He does have some weaknesses, like he does give up his back, which I don't like. Definite weakness for him there, and Jack Shaw is very, very good at taking your back. So if you allow Jack Shaw to get on your back, you're going to have problems because that's like his speciality. Very, very solid grappler. So Hunter needs to be very careful if he is taken down, giving up his back, and it is something he's prone to doing. He also slows down as well. But Jack Shaw we've never really seen dragged into deep waters in a fight. So, how's his cardio going to hold up in a fight that might be a bit nip and tuck? He's definitely the toughest fight of his career. I favour Hunter on the feet. He is more wild, but I do favour him. As I said, he's got the calf kick as well, and he will throw in combination, but he just tends to slow down. And I did have money on Hunter. I got him at about plus 150, but I actually balled out this week because I've just got this nagging feeling that Jack Shaw's going to come in and pull this off. I just think he's going to get his grappling going. I don't like how Hunter gives his back up, and Jack Shaw's very, very good at taking your back. He's a very smooth grappler. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Brett Johns, Jack Shaw in a way. But Shaw, the question marks I've always had about Shaw are how he will look against someone when he's forced to stand, and also physicality, because I don't think he's the greatest athlete out there. Hunter's fairly physical, so we might get to see some of those questions answered. And Hunter, one, not being technically a great striker, he will throw, he will be aggressive. So it's definitely Jack's biggest test, and I could completely get why people would bet Hunter here. Like I said, I had money on him. I've just something in my guts telling me Jack Shaw's going to win this fight. I just think he can get his grappling going. I don't like how Hunter gives his back up, which that's a weakness against Jack Shaw, and he does slow down in fights as well. So I'm gonna actually pick Jack Shaw here. I wouldn't lay the -170 he's sitting at now because there are question marks. It is a big step up, but I've just got a feeling he's going to pass this test. So I'm gonna go with Jack Shaw here. Yorgan De Castro taking on Jairus Dano next. Dano is his first fight in 4.5 years. So you just don't know what to expect. But I've got to go with De Castro here. De Castro's not looked great his last couple. He started well against Hardy, but I think he hurt his leg. It took away his leg kicks and the volume really dropped off. And then he just got outworked by Felipe, who, Felipe for a heavyweight has real high volume approach. It's actually pretty impressive. But I've got to go to Castro here. Dano, when you watch tape of Dano, every fight I can find, he gasses. We're talking 4.5 years later here. He's now 37. Is he suddenly fixed that? I'd be very surprised. So, yeah, there's unknowns, but I've got to go Castro. I think he's going to knock Dano out. He's got nasty leg kicks. I think he'll get them going. He's pretty fast for a heavyweight. He's got fast hands. Dano's probably going to look for the takedown, but De Castro's got that low centre of gravity. I don't think he's going to have much joy, and I think worst case, I think De Castro will win a decision just through Dano gassing, but I think De Castro puts him away. Next, we've got John Makdessi taking on Ignacio Bahamondes. Bahamondes is another Contender Series alumni. As I've already said, you need to be careful with these guys because they do often face overmatched guys and are better than they are. And let's be honest, Bahamondes had a complete bum on Contender Series. The guy was completely overmatched. But having said that, what I can't ignore here are the physical advantages. He's got a massive reach advantage. He's got a massive height advantage. He's fought at welterweight. He's going to have a size advantage. He's 12 years younger. There's just so much going in favour of Bahamondes physically. I can't pick against him here. Makdessi's 35. He fights once a year. Got kicked out of Ruthless Sport. I think he got kicked out of TriStar as well. I don't know where he's at. I just don't know where he's at. I've bet him in a few of his recent fights. I bet him as a dog against Abel Trujillo, and I bet him as a favourite against Jesus Pinedo. And the Pinedo fight was very uninspiring. Makdessi, when you look at Makdessi's stats, his significant strikes landed per minute is quite high, but it's very misleading. He's very much a point scorer. I'm surprised a lot of the strikes he lands are kind of classed as significant strikes. And, Bahamondes, even though he's got this massive reach advantage, he's not the best at using his length. He kind of crashes the distance and ends up in close quarters. That's definitely something he's got to work on. But, he's only 23 and he trains at Rodriguez's gym as well, so you've got to think that's something they're working on. It's the kind of camp that will work on people using their range, etc. So you've got to think someone like that will be working on that each camp and looking better each time. And I just can't ignore the advantages he's got here physically. So he is sitting at about -200, but I'm still picking him here. I think just the number of physical advantages I just can't ignore. So I'm going to go with Bahamondes here to win this. Next, Norma Dumont taking on Erin Blanchfield. Erin's taken this on really short notice, like a few days. Look, she's got some good wins outside of the UFC and in Invicta. She's got a win over Kay Hansen. She's also got a win over another current UFC fighter as well. Can't remember who off the top of my head. But she's fighting up here at 135. Norma's been up at 145. I just think the physicality is going to be a problem here. I threw some money on Erin when she was +270. This was blind because I just thought low-level women's MMA. I know Erin's got some hype, but I done tape and I hated it. And I've still got a little bit on Erin, because I thought I'm not going to buy it completely, because I reduced and it left me with like plus 300 on Erin. So I thought I've just got to leave a little bit on at plus 300 because it's lower level women's MMA. Who knows? But I just think physically she's going to struggle here. Norma's a strong girl. I mean, I know she got knocked out by Megan, but you know, she was holding Megan against the fence, showing her physicality. And I know Ashley Evans-Smith isn't great, but you know, she's a big girl, fairly physical, wrestling background, and you know, Norma just dealt with her physically, no problem. I just struggle to see Erin's path to victory here. I don't think she can get her to the floor. I think on the feet she's just going to struggle with the power. But having said all this, it's, you know, Norma's minus 250, and you know my rule of thumb with lower level women's MMA, it's dog or pass. So I can't bring myself to pick Norma as a minus 250 favourite, even though I think she's going to win. So from a betting angle, I would say just pass, because I can't lay minus 250 on lower level women's MMA unless I'm extremely confident. But at the same time, even though Erin, you can now still get plus 200, it just seems a tough fight for her. So I'm going to pick Erin just from a value perspective. But in all honesty, I won't be surprised if the line looks correct, just because of the size advantage. But I'm sticking with what I've said, guys. I said I'm going to pick the dog in lower level women's MMA unless I feel strongly the other way. And I do think Norma's going to win this, but you know, I am just kind of relying on size and physicality here. So who knows, you know, Erin is good on top. If she can get a takedown, you know, Norma could be in trouble. So I'll pick Erin, but it is with very, very little confidence. Holtzman Gamrot next. I think this is going to be a close fight. Gamrot, I think, gets a bit overrated. He was a big favourite in his UFC debut. I didn't really understand why. He's fairly big favourite now. I think he's at about minus 230. You know, he's well-rounded, Gamrot, but the problem with Gamrot is when you're betting him, you're basically betting on him winning by decision. He's not a finisher. I'd be very surprised if he stopped Holtzman. So, you know, you're laying plus 230 on someone who's probably only going to win by decision. It's a big price to lay. You know, he's well-rounded. He's strong in all areas. He doesn't excel anywhere. Striking, I have to give Holtzman the advantage on the feet here. Gamrot's going to look to take him down. Now, Holtzman can be taken down, but he's tough to hold down. He's good at getting back to his feet. So whether Gamrot can pull out the kind of Nick Lentz approach here to grind out a victory, possibly. But I mean, the problem with Holtzman is I think he's 38 or almost 38, and you look at his list of wins, and you know, his best wins probably Alan Patrick. You know, some of the fighters he's beaten have, you know, I mean, he's got a win over Miller, but he's a shot fighter. He's not the fighter he was. And he's coming off a bit of a beatdown against Dariush as well, Scott. But I mean, like I said, Gamrot's just not a finisher. He's not got power. I'm going to side with Holtzman here at these odds. I think plus 200 is a bit too wide for Gamrot. I'm really surprised. I mean, the UFC site's actually saying he's minus 250 now. I'm just surprised he's been bet up that big a favourite again. I think he closed last time about minus 350, maybe even minus 400. And I'm surprised he's this big a favourite here. I'm just not overly sold on him. You know, I think he can hang around in the UFC for a while as long as he's matched well. And they're not giving him kind of guys in the top 10, top 15 straight off the bat. But I'm just not sold on him. Like I say, I don't like the fact that he doesn't really finish fights. I really think Holtzman's going to give him problems here. I think this is going to be a really close fight, and so I think you've got to take the value at Scott Holtzman at plus 200 here. He's very durable. His striking's not bad. He can be taken down, but he's good at getting back to his feet. He's very physical for the weight, real muscular guy, and his cardio holds up well. So I'll go with Holtzman. Jim Miller, Joe Solecki. The pattern on Jim Miller now is round one or bust. He's not won a fight outside of round one for a long time. But, you know, he might get the fight. Well, he probably will get the fight. He likes it. He's going to get a grappling affair with Joe Solecki. So, I'm not in love with the line on Solecki. But these older fighters that are fading, I mean, you've got to fade them, really. I'm not betting Solecki, though, personally. But I think he's probably going to end up winning a I think the fight will start out competitive, but Jim Miller will inevitably slow down as the fight goes on. And I just think it'll allow Solecki to grapple his way to probably a decision win. So I will go with Joe Solecki here. I wouldn't be shocked by the upset. I'm not sold on Solecki yet. I do think he's a little bit too one-dimensional for the UFC, but you know, him and Jim Miller style-wise are probably going to be happy to grapple here. Jim Miller's stand-up it has improved, but he just slows down in fights, and once he slows down, Solecki can probably get the grappling going. And who knows, Jim might even initiate it in round one, I'm not sure, but round one could be dicey if you're on Solecki. It's probably a good live bet spot. Jim Miller will probably have a decent round one, and then you can jump on Solecki, because Jim is going to slow down. He slows down in all his fights now, unless it's an incredibly slow-paced fight. He's got that Lyme's disease, which is probably taking its toll on him. Feel really sorry for him. But I'll go with Solecki, but there's no way I'm laying that line on Solecki. I'm just not doing it. I think I wouldn't say it's dog or pass. I think if you're going to bet Miller, you've got to look at a round one prop, and then maybe live bet the fight. Next fight, we've got Mike Perry taking on Daniel Rodriguez. Look, if I knew for a fact Mike Perry was going to come out here like the old Mike Perry, I would definitely be betting him here as the underdog, plus 140. I can't bet on assumptions, though. He's done his camp at MMA Masters, so it's a step in the right direction. But until, as a bettor, I need to see, I can't go off, you know, someone's training camp and what they're saying. I need to see a return to form in the cage before I lay money. But I've just got a feeling he's going to look all right in this fight. He's had his kid. Maybe it's helped him get his head screwed on. Rodriguez coming off a disappointing loss to Nicholas Dalby. He'd started to build some hype. Fight before that, he nearly got knocked out early. He came back really well to get the win in the first round, but you know, he got dropped hard in that fight. Mike Perry's coming off that fight with Tim Means. He's definitely looked off. The last couple of fights, he hasn't looked like the same fighter, Mike Perry. So if that kind of Mike Perry turns up, then it's definitely Daniel Rodriguez's fight to win. But I'm just intrigued to see what Mike Perry would get. But that's just, I'm definitely not fancying laying minus 170 on Daniel Rodriguez. But just what Perry would get is just making me hesitate on laying the dog odds on Perry. Because if he does turn up like the last two, he's going to get picked apart. So it's a tough one. I'm going to pick Perry. I'm going to go with the dog here. But like I said, if you're betting money on it, be prepared to be disappointed, because he could very well look like the same fighter from the last couple of fights, and then he's going to struggle. But I do like that at least he's joined the camp, not doing his own camp anymore. So I'm going to go with Perry here. It's going to be a sweaty fight, but you know, if Perry turns up with his head screwed on, a bit of a return to form, he's going to give Rodriguez all he can handle. So I'm going to take the dog odds, but it's one of those plays where if you're playing Rodriguez, you're banking on Perry fighting like the last couple of fights. If you're playing Perry, you're kind of banking on a return to form. It's, you know, of course it's a risk because we're betting, but I like to make informed decisions based on what I see in the cage. So I just can't bet it, but I'm going to pick Perry as the underdog. Next, we've got Nina Nunes taking on Mackenzie Dern. So Nina Ansaroff just taking her name Nunes. Nina's returning here from having a baby. This is the big question mark with this fight. She's not fought for a couple of years. How is she going to look, basically? I mean, if we're going off her last fight, I would definitely have played Nina here. I mean, I could have got pick'em odds. I could have even got her as a slight dog, but I just hesitated on it just because she is 35 and she's coming back from having the baby. She's not fought in a couple of years. But, I mean, stylistically, I think this is a solid fight for her. She's got decent takedown defence. Mackenzie Dern's takedowns are just not good. I mean, her striking does look like it's improving under Jason Perillo, but I still don't think that's going to be enough for her to outstrike Nina. But she's hit like one takedown in the UFC, and I know she's not tried a great deal of takedowns in the UFC, but even if you go and look at her fights beforehand, just her takedowns aren't good. That's something she should be working on ferociously, because if she does get you on the mat, she's so dangerous, and the fight's basically a wrap, or at least a round's a wrap. So this is an interesting fight. I mean, Nina's been bet out to like minus 150 now, which I'm a little bit surprised that it held at around even money for a while, and I actually thought Nina might go to go to dog status, but obviously everyone's looking at Nina's last fight against Suarez, where she made Suarez fight for them takedowns, and in the third round Suarez couldn't get the takedowns, and Nina started picking her apart on the feet. I think if you're looking at Nina, you just need to look at now Nina decision. I really, really don't see her finishing Mackenzie down. I'd be very surprised. So I think it's a Nina. I've not looked at the prop bet. Last time I looked, Nina decision was plus 150. It's probably coming a little bit, but if you can still get plus 150, I think that's the play on this fight. I just feel like with Mackenzie, you're relying on her getting the fight to the floor here, and I just haven't seen the takedown game out of her to think she can get Nina down. But it might only be one takedown required, or to win the fight, 2 takedowns if she's going to win a decision. That's the thing with Mackenzie. She's so good on the ground. So I can't lay Nina as a favourite now, not coming off that layoff and the fact that, as I say, Mackenzie needs either 1 takedown or 2 takedowns to win this fight. So it would be Nunes, but still, my play here would be Nunes decision if I can get plus 150 or so, because I just don't like betting Dern, because her striking, it did look a bit better last time out, but it's still pretty rough. And like I said, she's got no takedowns. And until I see her come out with a good takedown game, it's just tough for me to back her. I mean, she kind of got lucky against Randa and Cyphers. They both went to the floor with her. It was crazy. Nina's not going to do that. She's an intelligent fighter. Mackenzie's going to have to earn the takedown here. So I'm going to pick Nina. I don't like the money line now, though. I don't like it. Like I said, I would only play decision now, but only if I can get plus money, ideally the plus 150, even plus 140. But I can understand Mackenzie Dern bets, fade on Nina coming back from the baby, etc. 35 years of age. I think Nina was only back in the gym in January. So, I was on the fence when it was even money, and I definitely wouldn't play the money line now, and it would only be the decision line. But I'm going to pick Nina. Sam Alvey, Julian Marquez next. I'm going to pick Sam Alvey as the underdog here, plus 160. Look, if you bet Sam Alvey, you're highly liable to sit there pulling your hair out while he's doing his smile and throwing no volume. But he's going to get the stand-up fight here with Marquez. Marquez, I mean, he got that come-from-behind victory last time out in a fight he was 2 rounds down in. Guy gassed out, and he managed to, I think he ended up locking up the submission, didn't he? He's got a really good chin, Julian. So it's definitely worth a look at, for me, the Alvey decision prop. I know it was plus 400 earlier in the week. I don't think there's any way you can be laying minus 200 on Julian. I mean, he was going to lose that fight last time out. I mean, he was a minute away from losing. What would the odds be if he'd lost that fight? This is what I mean. Just having that W instead of that L, it changes the odds completely. I mean, if Julian was coming into this fight off a loss, well, Alvey would probably be a slight favourite. So I'm picking Alvey here, but it's just as a bettor, he's a tough guy to bet because he's low volume. He can be really frustrating, especially when he's doing his smile and stuff, and it's just throws some punches. But he's got a good check right hook. I can see Marquez just running into stuff like that. But I mean, Marquez has always shown a ridiculously solid chin. So it's not a fight I really want to be betting on, but I don't think you can bet Marquez here. I think it's Alvey or pass, but Alvey's a tough guy to put your money on. If the decision is still around plus 400, I definitely think that's worth a sprinkle on Alvey. Next, Arnold Allen, Sodiq Yusuff, one of the best fights on the card, 2 very promising prospects. Arnold Allen just hasn't been active enough, so it's good to finally see him back in the cage and a step up in competition. Sodiq Yusuff, very explosive guy, very powerful striker. Real good mesh of styles here. So Arnold Allen is a southpaw. He's more of a volume boxer. He's not really got much power, but I do like his boxing. He's got nice fast hands. He throws in combination well. You can see he's well schooled on the feet. Versus Sodiq, who's more kind of power over substance. His power's got him out of trouble in a few fights. I remember the Shayman Moraes fight. I had it 1-1 going into round 3. Nip and tuck in round 3 until we dropped him. Gabriel Benitez, he was in trouble with early. His power got him out of trouble there early as well. And we've seen him struggle a couple of times against southpaws. Now, if you watch the first 2 rounds against Andre Fili are mainly grappling, but if you watch the third round, it's all on the feet, and Fili just picks him apart on the feet. Sodiq seemed to slow down in that third round, and then if you watch the Benitez fight, he got dropped. Benitez was landing some shots in him. Another southpaw. So I wonder if southpaw is a dynamic he has a bit of an issue with. Arnold Allen is a natural southpaw. He'll fight out the southpaw stance the whole fight. He's definitely at a power disadvantage. Allen probably, he probably only wins by decision. That's the one knock on him here is I don't really see him finishing Sodiq. But having said that, Sodiq's chin is a little bit of a question mark for me. I saw him get dropped badly on the regional scene. I don't think he lost due to the strike. I think he got clubbed and subbed. But then we've seen Benitez drop him as well. I'm just a little bit wary of his chin. But Arnold isn't a massive puncher. So Allen needs to be careful with the power of Sodiq. I think the grappling is going to cancel itself out. I don't really see either guy going for it. Sodiq used calf kicks really well. We saw that on the Contender Series in his fight with the good boxer guy whose name is escaping me. But Allen's a southpaw, so it takes away that calf kick. So I'm kind of leaning Allen at these odds at plus 125. Now, he's got to be careful with the power because Sodiq clearly hits very hard for a featherweight. But I think if Sodiq can't get a knockout, I think Allen's going to out-volume him here to a close decision victory. I do like Allen's boxing, puts combinations together well. Now, this is a step up. He's kind of been facing, guys like Nick Lentz, Gilbert Melendez. So you can't necessarily take too much away from victories over guys that are fading on their way out. But I do like how he puts his combinations together. And Sodiq, like I said, his power's bailed him out a few times. So with the odds the way they are, I'm going to lean Allen here as the underdog and pick him. But the worry for me is I think he can probably only win by decision. Sadiq's probably got more paths to victory in that he can get a knockout, and the decision is in play for him as well. And I think that might hold Allen back if he gets to the stage where he jumps up the levels, his lack of ability to finish fights. But I'm going to go with at these odds Arnold Allen. Main event: Marvin Vettori, Kevin Holland. So Kevin Holland's coming in at late notice here. Only fought a couple of weeks ago. Darren Till broke his collarbone. He's coming in here. Last time I looked, Vettori was about minus 350, which it feels about right. The one worry I have with Vettori now, I bet Derek Brunson against Holland because I knew Brunson would wrestle. A very good wrestler. I knew takedowns were going to be easy for him. I thought he would ragdoll Holland. Marvin Vettori, I need to listen to an interview. I'm not sure what he's been saying. I wonder what his approach is going to be because Marvin Vettori is a very good grappler. He's very good on top. But you don't really see him go for takedowns in his fights. He generally strikes. So because if you said to me this fight is going to be standing up for as long as it lasts, I would definitely bet Kevin Holland at these odds because I think on the feet it's a very close fight. Vettori's advantage is taking the fight to the floor and basically doing what Derek Brunson done. But Vettori I think is better on top in terms of he's more dangerous. And Kevin Holland has to be very careful he doesn't end up falling into a head and arm choke or even just getting pounded out because Vettori's got some good ground and pound. If you go and watch his fight with Omari Akhmedov, he has him in trouble in round 3 from top position. He has Shoeface in trouble at the end of round 2, I think it is, with ground and pound. He's a dangerous guy from top position. It's just what approach is he going to take? Is he going to come in with the wrestling approach here? I don't fully trust him to come out and wrestle Kevin Holland. It would not shock me if he came out and stood with him. And I think that's a risky proposition. He's got a clear path to victory. That's why I'd like to listen to an interview just to see if Marvin is what he is saying with regards to his approach to this fight. Because it is a different opponent, the Darren Till fight. I wonder what the approach there was. I think he would have struggled to take Till down. I think it was probably going to be a stand-up fight. So his game plan's probably going to have to switch up here, or I would recommend he switches it up if he was going to stand with Till, because Holland, a big weakness for Holland is his takedown defence. And he does slow down as well if you push a pace. Like, he was all right against Brunson, but Brunson was taking him down and not really doing much. But if Vettori, really works him from top control. But, we've seen Vettori slow down in fights as well. You saw against Hermansson, he took round 3 off. It was a big sweat for me because I bet Vettori there against Hermansson, and I thought he was slowing down, but he just seemed to take the round off just to save himself for the last couple. So this potentially could be a lot closer than a lot of people think and what the odds show. But if Vettori comes out and he uses his physical advantages, he's a big, strong physical middleweight. Holland can make welterweight. If he just relies on taking him down, it's his fight. He's got a tough chin as well, Vettori. He's tough to hurt. So I definitely trust him more than someone like Brunson in terms of having to take a little fire to get in close and get the takedowns. But I just hope Vettori doesn't come. Well, I've got no money on it, so it doesn't really bother me. But the smart approach for Vettori here will be to take the fight to the floor. But like I say, I'm not entirely trusting him to do that. So I'm going to pick Vettori, but I have held off betting him because I think that line's a little bit too wide. Because if Vettori does stand with him, Holland's a good striker. I think this fight evens up dramatically. He's got a really good chin as well, Holland. So I'll go Vettori, but if he doesn't wrestle, and I would not be shocked if he came out here and struck with Kevin Holland, this fight's going to be a lot closer than the odds are making it look. So that wraps up the card, guys. We'll be back next week. Good luck with your bets. 15 fights to get through, so a lot of live betting opportunity. If you want to join the service, Pro MMA Betting.com. We've got a pre-bet out with members as well. There's also Bellator tonight, which I've actually passed on from a betting perspective. But I've got something on ACA, actually, which is later on, which is the Russian show. Used to be ACB. And we've got Bellator next week as well. I need to dig into that card, see if there's anything on that particular card. And UFC next week, there'll probably be a few bets as well. So I've capped that card already. I don't mind it from a betting perspective. So good luck, everyone, and I'll be back next week.